Hey everybody, my name is Nathan Fowkes, and it is fantastic to be joining you for Adobe Max online and for painting luminous color in Photoshop because, my friends, that's our job, right? Our job as artists is to bring light to the darkness. People walk into the gallery, they go into the movie theater, they turn on the video game, and they get immersed in this experience that we create for them. And we all know that is not an easy thing to do. We've got to get every good idea, every tool, every principle, every technique that we can to make that happen. And so, my day job, my primary job has been as an animation artist, a concept artist for animation. And I started out way back in the 90s. I started out in using traditional paints, but we very quickly went digital to Photoshop. And then and now, Adobe Photoshop has been the principal, it's been the industry standard painting tool to do concept art. And so I started out at DreamWorks Animation way back in the day in the 90s, went through that whole fantastic stretch where we got to do that slate of DreamWorks movies. I was there for 15 years. And during that period, as we made that transition and then went further, I'm very proud that it was my generation who invented digital painting. And I got to be a part of that. And I want to try and share with you some of the key ideas that I've learned because I'm personally consider myself to be both a traditional painter and a digital painter. I want to show you a couple of things because whenever I get out of the studio, I like to splash the paint around, just get my sketchbook out or sometimes a larger canvas and see what I can capture, whether it's down at the fair or it's out on a trip abroad or any little or large place that I might happen to be. I personally prefer to use watercolors and gouache as my sketching and painting medium. That's my preference. And my goal has been to try and capture a quality of that light, color, and luminosity that happens that we really experience at all of these places, all of these times and locations. And so I try and bring both of those things together here in my studio space. And so you see my little digital rig, my computer and painting setup there. So I also want to show you some digital paintings here where I'm trying to do exactly the same thing. I'm now trying to use digital tools using Photoshop to create exactly the same quality of color and luminosity. So here's a couple of things. All digital painting, Photoshop, whether it's architecture or just up in the national parks nearby here in Los Angeles. And I want to share with you the tradition that I've done my best to learn about and to build on, whether it's traditional painting or digital painting. And it all begins, in my mind, with this guy, Georges Pierre Seurat. You know the guy, right? Of course you do. The pointillist guy who went dot 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 dash 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 dot dot for oh my gosh, for years. This poor guy. And I keep thinking, if only this guy had Photoshop. I want to show you this painting. This painting is called A Sunday Afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte, and he spent 2 years on this painting. And you can really see it. You can really see if we zoom in, all of those dots and dashes, the pointillism that he spent 2 years putting together to get the overall effect. And the reason, oh my, the guy must have had the patience of a saint. I don't know, maybe you and I back at that time period, maybe we would too, because we didn't have all the luxuries we have now, but now we do have the luxuries. And 2 years, I mean, I've been lucky if I have had as long as 2 weeks to complete one painting. So with Photoshop, we can actually be a pointillist. And that 2 year process can come down to a much shorter period of time. Because take a look at what he's doing just brilliantly. Look at the beautiful, the luxurious color that's happening here. I'll just zoom in further and further. You know it, you see it, all the points and dots and dashes. Well, these optically mix. we stand back, we get the overall effect of the painting. And the painting, it is a beautiful composition. I encourage you to take a closer look when we actually have more time, because this presentation is meant to be less than 30 minutes for you. So I'll just keep rolling here. But all of these beautiful colors, they're lush, they're rich, but when we step back, they optically mix and create the overall color that he's looking for. And so the paintings take on a richness and a luminosity that mimics what light really does. It goes beyond what seems like pigment can do and creates that vibrance and that vibration that real light has the effect of. And I'm going to zoom a little bit further for you here. So we can go this far, and we can go this far, and you can see the brilliance of these strokes put together side by side. And so the term that's often used for this color is simultaneous contrast. These rich colors side by side, they take on that extra quality, almost that vibration. And so from here, let's jump to another artist, because this really took off. Artists wanting to capture what they saw in the landscape realized that they could get closer to it using this approach than what had been previously done, because you're probably familiar with paintings from the French Academy from this time period, middle 1800s and a little bit later. The tradition at that time was perfectly smooth and blended brushstrokes. It was fantastic. It was beautiful, but it couldn't achieve this, because let's zoom in a little further on this one. This one is called Sailboats and Estuary by Theo van Rysselberg. And so if we zoom a little bit closer, you see those side-by-side colors happening. And I've often felt, you're looking at the glow of reflections in water. You're looking at the luminosity in the sky. And even if the water feels blue and the sky feels blue, it feels like there's this backlit warmth. It's still cool. It's blue, but there's something more. There's actually a warmth to it, even though it feels bluish. And it has driven me nuts over the years, trying to find this quality. Well, learning about the Impressionists, learning about pointillism, learning about what Seurat did and these other artists, and creating this simultaneous contrast of color, they achieved that backlit warmth on elements that are even blue in their overall effect. It's amazing. And so this was their breakthrough. This was why Impressionism, why it's heralded. It was their grand breakthrough. And we can learn from it. And we can bring these ideas even to our digital painting. So let's do that. Let's go to a digital landscape here. And I promise I'm going to run through some ideas and some principles, and then I've got a full demonstration for you where we're going to start an image from scratch. We're going to use some of these ideas, apply some digital techniques, and see if we can capture this luminosity. Let me show you a couple of examples first here. So this is out where I grew up in Central California. It is a digital painting, and let me just zoom in for you so you can see some of these things happening. So yeah, back in here, really it's just kind of a gray overall. If we zoom way back out, well, it's just an overall grayish color. And the trees, well, they're kind of a golden orange color overall, if you look at it as a comp. But we zoom way back in, and I'm using these ideas of side-by-side colors. The warms, the cools, the reds, the greens. Even within the oranges, I'm trying to get that variety. Not every one of these leaves are golden. Some of them are more red, some are more cool or green or cyan or even magenta. And you can see it here, all of those different colors blending together to create the overall effect that I hope is even more rich in its presentation. Okay, so let me show you what some of the digital techniques are that I've used to put these different varieties of colors together here. So we'll just zoom back out and we'll jump over into Photoshop for you. So in Photoshop, I like to use the hue cube. Now there's no right or wrong thing to do, but it has a big range of value in there. And so I can pick colors nicely. The hue cube is set up with hue, saturation, and value. The three properties of color, everything that we ever see are those three things. So I've got a 50% gray that I've already laid down on the canvas, and I'm picking three colors here. I want to pick three colors in hue that are very different from each other. I'm going to go for an orange, a purple, and a green. Three very different hues, but they are going to be low in saturation. They're not going to be hypersaturated colors, and I'm aiming for them to be identical in value. I'm close. The purple is just barely darker than the gray. So let me fix that. So I'm just going to go a little bit lighter. I want all of these to be identical in value so that they have value in common. They unify in value. There we go. That's got the value just right. So let me fill that in. So they're going to unify in value, but they're subtly varying and have a richness, a contrast in color hue. You know, hue, the spectrum, the name of the color. So let's put these together in pointillism. Let's do what Thoreau took years to do that we can do instantly in Photoshop. I just put down that orange, filled it in to save time, and then I just put a little separation on the brush, sprinkled it in there, grabbed the green, a little, separation on the brush. So as I just run it across there, it fills it in, and boom. See how in that area that I filled in, if we go way out, it's still an optical gray, but it's a rich, colorful optical gray that has a lot more luminosity and more of an engaging effect. So let's do another one. Let's go to color dynamics here. I'm going to go to hue jitter in the color dynamics tool, and I'm just going to take that hue jitter all the way up. And now I'm just going back and forth. I'm just waving that brush back and forth over. I just have a separation on the spacing, and it automatically jitters the color, meaning it just picks a full range of hues, and kaboom. Thoreau is rolling in his grave right now, my friends, because we can do it instantly. So let's do one more technique. I'm going for a brush, and I'm using the color mode. If you just select the color mode, and I'm putting a texture on it. I'm using that texture right there. And so I'm going for a magenta. You see, if you didn't see it before, you see the color mode is selected up at the top left. And so I've just, with the texture, sprinkled in a magenta. Now I've picked a green. I've inverted the texture. So now it's going to fill in the gaps in between the magenta with the green. And now it's still an optical gray when you step way back and look at it together, but it has a richness. We're going to do one more. And I know we're zooming through this, my friends. We only have about 25 minutes for this whole presentation. But if you look at the assets that are provided for you in the cloud associated with this presentation, I've got this file for you. You can take all the time that you want and take a close look at this. So I'm going for a color balance layer. I've picked a green. And so now I'm doing the same kind of effect, but instead of a brush, I'm doing it with layers. Now I'm using an eraser that has that same texture, and I'm erasing out this texture out of the layer. Now I'm going to turn on a magenta layer, inverting the eraser, the texture, so that it will fill in this green color in the gaps in between the magenta. Just very simple and very straightforward. But these different approaches all do the same kind of thing, but you can control your color in different ways. If you prefer it with the brush, if you prefer it with the adjustment layers, if you prefer it with opaque painting, all of those options are available. And I use all of them at different times, different places for different effects. But this is going to be up to you. Nobody's the same. No one prefers the same approach. I really encourage you to experiment. Try all of these things until you find what you enjoy, what you're comfortable with, and what gives you that dynamic effect that you're looking for. So back to this image one more time, just so you can see, now that you know what I'm doing and how I did it, I'm combining all three, and actually that was even 4 different approaches. I'm combining a little bit of all of those to get that extra engagement of luminosity into this digital painting. Okay, so now I want to get to the demo for you. And this is the location that we're going to do. And this is my photo reference. And I have one more piece of photo reference right here that I'm going to show you. And I can already hear what just about all of you are saying right now. You're saying, geez, Nathan, I mean, this is your photo reference? Maybe, I mean, could you invest in a nice SLR camera? And, here we are at Adobe, you get a good camera and then the amazing, Adobe photo tools that you can get beautiful, your photo, you can take great photos and then finish them with the Adobe tools. Nathan, take a night class. Well, you're absolutely right about that. And the tools are fantastic and I recommend them. But I have the opposite thing in mind for this kind of work because the photo reference is not the finish. And sometimes I even feel like if I have a beautiful photo, I almost don't want to do a painting of it because why bother? It's already there. I actually really like bad photo reference. I'm completely serious about that. The worse, the better sometimes because you're thinking, you're thinking, geez, and if you had a new iPhone, you get better than this. What are you using, like a 3-year-old Samsung? No, yeah, well, maybe something like that. But I just like taking snapshots with my phone because I want to be there. I want to have the experience of the place. Maybe do some sketches, take some notes, and then having this now lets me put my own interpretation instead of being driven by the photo. I can be driven by what my own experience was because we each have our own experience at a location and we each have our own ideas about what was meaningful about that place. And then we can bring those ideas out. And that's how our artwork becomes unique to us. It's how it becomes special. It's how we bring something to our audience that they can only get by coming to us. And so if you want to know how to be unique and to become, let's say, valuable to your audience as an artist, that's how you do it. You decide what's meaningful to you about your ideas in your locations, and then you only bring out those elements and you edit away everything else, and what's distilled out of it might just be something special. That's what we're going to go for here. So we have this backlit birch forest in Utah. I was on a painting trip to Utah. And so here we go. And to show you a little bit more about the location, because as the sun got lower in the sky, and by the way, this burnout, there was a lot going on in the sky, a real luminous warmth in the sky. That was there that I want to bring into it. And here's looking the opposite direction. So you can get a feel for what the local colors were, the beautiful fall foliage that was coming out, the local colors of the objects. And then back to this image. And I really like, I'm going to zoom in here because I like this central area. And then it's nicely framed here on the left and on the right. So I'm going to focus on this area. I'm going to focus on what I experienced a little bit later in the day as the sun set a little bit further and we got even more warmth. So let's dive right into that. I'm going to drop in, just like we did before, I'm dropping in a color, in this case, kind of a rose color. And then I'm going like before. In the example, I'm going for a green that's about the same value, the same lightness. And I'm going to use that green to get a rich vibrance between the reds and the greener foliage. As you recall, in that location, there was a darker central area and then the two sides framing it. And I'm already starting to build that up. I'm just thinking about simple shapes. And all I'm using is a simple texture brush. I'm going to use this brush for most of the demonstration. And if you're wondering, well, can I download that brush, Nathan? Is it available? Well, I don't even know where the brush came from. There's nothing special about it. It's just a nice texture brush. There's thousands of those available just everywhere, or you can even make your own. So any good texture brush is going to do for you something like this. And you'll find your own textures, and you'll find a texture brush that works for what you want to do better than what my texture brush might do for you. So I'm just slowly filling in these areas, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking about here. I'm thinking about big, simple shapes. I'm thinking about those simple luminous relationships that we talked about before. And I'm thinking about the local color and the light, because I mentioned that everything that we see is a combination of the color hue, the color saturation, and the value, the lightness and the darkness of the color. I'm thinking about those three things, but I'm also thinking about the other way of thinking about what we see, which is the local color of the objects and the light, the quality of the light that illuminates those objects. And so as I slowly build this up, you'll see, for instance, I laid down some dark reds, and then I'm glazing or kind of texturing over top of those dark reds a green. Well, that's what foliage really does. Foliage, the leaves, they don't grow on the inside, they grow on the outside. Their job is to collect sunlight. So nature doesn't put effort into greenery inside of a plant. It's almost always just on the outside. So inside you have the older brush, you have the bark, you have the dead wood and the live wood. You get rich browns and reds in the interior, and usually it's darker and more shadowy. And then you have those richer, greener tones over top, the foliage. And being fall, and we had some of those fall color changes, there's different shades of green, yellow, and gold happening here. That rich and golden livery, I think that's a quote from something I took a night class. I didn't take a night class in photography, but hey, I took a night class in literature or something. But yeah, those rich colors that nature carries. And so I'm layering those up, but I am thinking about, this isn't just abstraction. This isn't Nathan just drifting off into la la land. Well, it is in part. It's Nathan doing what Nathan cares about, but still trying to have a little bit of structure, a little bit, maybe a lot of what nature really does, influencing this, because I want there to be something familiar in what's happening here. And so I'm getting those darks in the center of the vertical areas and the darks in the lower underneath areas. And then you can see as those darks lift up, you can see layers of greener and yellower light where skylight, ambient light is coming down and illuminating layers. And you can see at the bottom, there's kind of a layer of green, and then there's a dark, and then a lighter layer, and then a dark, and then a lighter layer, and then a dark and a lighter layer. And those things move back in space. So yes, I'm drifting off into La La Land, having fun with the color, but not just that, there's real depth, layers and depth that I'm trying to get into the image as the layers of foliage stair step back into the distance. And so you can see here, now it's time to get those birch trees. Well, they're a light local value. They have that beautiful light trunk, but there's warm light bouncing around everywhere. And they're in shadow. They don't have direct light on them. So I'm doing a warm middle value for those. And then I'm going to add some light onto them. And that's another brush that I had used there that just has a little texture on it. You saw a moment ago that I went to the liquefy layer to get a little bit of an organic curve into some of these, push it a little further than what I initially got. I have my main masses and my bigger branches, and then I'm sprinkling in some of the smaller branches to be nice complements to the larger ones. Notice that they stair step back in space. The closer ones are lower in the picture plane, and then the higher, smaller, further away trunks, they're higher in the picture plane. There's perspective here, my friends. Their structure. I want this to have the familiarity of a real landscape. As elements get closer to the horizon line, they get higher in the picture plane. And so I've got to get that structure in my image. It's not just about pretty color, though it's mostly about pretty color. Okay, so now you just saw that I started glazing in. There's also some cool skylight. Looking straight out, there's that glowing warm sunset light in the distance. But if you were there and you looked straight up and off to screen right, you would have seen blue sky. And so there's some cool light coming down, illuminating the side of those tree trunks. I pushed that cool light just a little bit purple to keep the overall warmth effect, keep that, even though I have so many different colors in here, I'm unifying those colors towards warm. If your color starts falling apart, it feels kind of clashy, that means it's too much contrast, too much differences. It needs more unity. And so, yeah, I have a lot of greens and such here, and even some cools, but all of those colors have an influence of warms in them. And so we zoomed right through this, my friends, and this is the finished image. I finished off here by sprinkling a little bit of extra foliage to kind of break up the tree trunks. They were a little bit stark there. And so we've got it all pulled together here. And I want to zoom in for you so you can see the way that these colors are coming together with that concept of simultaneous contrast happening. So let's zoom in a bit. Let's go right up here. So what do we got? Well, it's just like in the mini demonstration earlier. We've got 2, 3, 4 different colors that are different in hue, but all nearly identical in value to get that luminosity, because bouncing around that atmosphere, the warm light of the sun, the cool light of the sky. And then we come over here and we get, does it look familiar? You know, browns, gray greens, and gray purples, the rich natural colors that really occurred there. And so I'm doing that throughout the image here. We're getting some backlit glow. There's some actual direct sunlight hitting back behind here. So that's what these little glowy areas are. But we have the cooler light coming in from the sky for more luminosity in top planes. Same idea is happening over on the other side. And I want to show you one more thing about this image. I've learned over the years working in the industry, my day job, as I've mentioned, in animation. I was kind of had my primary residence at DreamWorks, and then I moved on from there to Disney, and have had a chance to work with many studios and see what their expectations are. They're very high expectations. And going through that learning curve and also working with many students as a teacher, it's human nature to want to get a lot of contrast in our image, and that's a good thing. And it seems like our go-to, when we don't think about it, we go for light-dark contrast. And that's also a good thing. But everybody uses it all the time and too much because that's our natural inclination when we don't think about it. I just want to invite you, yes, value contrast, light-dark contrast, but step away from that. When you're looking for something richer and more poetic, and subdue the value contrast in favor of hue contrast. Because let me just show you this in value. Yeah, there's definitely value contrast here, and you can see my composition. I'm trying to get a little more visual interest right in the middle with value, but it's fairly low value contrast. I don't want this image to be all about the lights and the darks. I want it to be about the rich luminosity of color to bring this location to life and bring to you the experience of luminous color that I had the experience of in visiting this location on a painting trip in Utah. So all of you, I want to wish you the very best and much success as artists. Cheers.